Welcome to Southern California, New York, Canada, and elsewhere. This is the Maple Business Council Fall 2020 reception. And what we're going to do this morning is we're going to do a quick report on Maple, for about a half hour or less. And then we're going to introduce Chelsea Peet from the province of Ontario to talk about Ontario's economy, sort of the road ahead post-COVID, and why Ontario is going to continue to be an attractive destination. And then we're going to hear from Bill Klages on leveraging Toronto's tech ecosystem as part of a software nearshoring strategy. And then we're going to try something a little bit different from the typical webinars. And if you've been joining these, you may have participated in breakout rooms. What we'll do at the end is we'll split the attendees into two groups, and Chelsea will join one, Bill will join the other, and we encourage you to have a dialogue with each of them to talk about the material that they presented and other perspectives. And then about halfway through that remaining half hour, we'll switch the speakers into the different breakout rooms. So the idea is just to get it a little bit more intimate, and we'll see how it goes. So appreciate it. And away we go. If you could advance the slides, Stephen. Great. So currently we don't have everyone forced on mute, but if you wouldn't mind keeping yourself on mute unless you're speaking, could be a dog bark or a train or a car or whatever that interrupts, and we just appreciate having the best audio experience for everybody. We are recording today's session, and we'll make the materials and the presentation recording available in a follow-up communication, so you can access that later. Questions are welcome. Please enter those into the chat box in the Zoom dashboard, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible, either in chat or we'll do it live in the call. And as mentioned, we'll have breakout rooms at the end. So I'm just going to hit, one important thing, and that is, why are we doing this? We've got a really important relationship between Canada and Southern California and other sectors, as we'll talk about more as we go forward. But we thought we'd highlight this this latest FDI research from World Trade Center, Los Angeles, again, sort of indicating how important Canada is as an investor in the Southern California marketplace. Just about 62,000 jobs depend on foreign-owned entities from Canada. So there's 1,600 firms and the wages of just about $6 billion. One of the things that's also noted in the research is that on average, Canadian foreign-owned enterprises pay significantly higher than sort of the job average in the marketplace. So these are good paying jobs as well that are supported by Canadian foreign-owned entities. So they're in retail, they're in wholesale, they're in financial, professional services, and lots in manufacturing. And then also, from a regional perspective, it's significant that they're in the Bay Area. So this focuses on Southern California, but the number of Bay Area jobs as well, Southern California, Greater California, and Los Angeles. And I guess the point to this really is that Canada is also, I think it's number 2 investor outside of the Bay Area and Los Angeles County. So it's something else to think about. It's not just the major markets. We're heavily invested, or Canada's heavily invested in the other markets as well. Next slide, Stephen. And so, Stephen, if you'll take it from here.
Great, thank you, Rob, and welcome everyone. So great to be together today. Thank you for making time to be part of this online version of our Southern California reception. We certainly miss being together in person, but it's great that we can connect this way. And I gotta say that we've just been so grateful for the resiliency of our community during the current challenges of the economy and the pandemic. We've continued to grow, and it's really our pleasure today to share with you the many new members who are part of our community. When we set out to found Maple in 2015, it was with a vision to have a cross-border, cross-sector, cross-growth stage community where we can get out of our traditional swim lanes, meet business leaders who are doing great things in a lot of different sectors to learn from one another. And happy to share today that we have members now in 20 different sectors, as you see listed here, quite a diversity, and we're not loaded into any one particular segment. And we have people that are business leaders who are really making important decisions, growing their businesses, with 80% of our members either holding a director level position or more senior. So it's just been terrific to see this growth. We've also grown substantially geographically. So home base has always been Southern California for the core team here at Maple, connecting back to Canadian markets. Today we have members in 17 different Canadian and US markets. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about our expansion to the East Coast with our Maple New York chapter in a few minutes as well. But just terrific to see that we have Maple networking opportunities in so many different locations. And if you look at our community overall, 60% of our members are in the US and 40% in Canada. And our Canadian members are in British Columbia, Alberta, of course, Ontario, and Quebec. So we are delighted to see this, this opportunity for us to not only connect within and across sectors, but also across markets too. As I mentioned, we have a number of new members to welcome today, and a little bit because too, it's been since, as Rob said, March since we last got our community together. 9 new executive members have joined Maple, and I just want to briefly introduce you to each. Pleasure to welcome Nicole Simonian, who is a partner and co-chair of the International Trade Practice with the law firm Crowell and Mooring. And Nicole's based in LA, and she's also on the board and committee of the World Trade Week celebration this year with the LA Area Chamber, and Maple is participating again in that program. Earlier this year, we launched a young professional membership tier for career track individuals and entrepreneurs under the age of 30 who are looking to network and share their inspirations and innovations with others. And we think as a networking executive community, it's important that we embrace multi-generational opportunities here and look to help welcome future leaders in our community through a young professional program. Brandon is the creative genius behind our Maple Conversations video series, and he founded his agency in Los Angeles to do video and digital creative work, and we're pleased to have Brandon as our first YP member. Also excited to welcome Pavan Dillon from San Francisco to our community just recently. Pavan is a founder and principal attorney with Dillon Immigration Law. And she helps businesses and executives move to Canada and be able to do their business and grow their enterprise and their families in the Canadian market. And she's one of the few attorneys in the US focused on that. And obviously we would be pretty busy these days with all that's going on across the border. So really happy to have Pavan join us. Going up the coast a little further, delighted to have Lorraine Duclos join us. Lorraine is a senior account director with Hemlock and Harling. And Hemlock and Harling is a direct marketing and third-party distribution service company. And Lorraine has deep roots in this space and had her own business in California. So really does embody our cross-border, our vision and experience set, and delighted to have Lorraine with us. And just as of last night, we were able to sneak this slide in at the last minute, but delighted to have Rhiannon Chow join us, also from Vancouver. Rhiannon is a client services executive with the global architecture, design services, and execution firm M. Mosier Associates. M. Mosier does a lot of work around the Pacific Rim, and Rhiannon has been an active participant in our past Vancouver events, and we're pleased to have her join us as an executive member. Going a little further east in Canada, Lee Smith is the owner of Reliable Logistics based in Mississauga, Ontario. And Reliable is a freight management services company doing last mile delivery and a lot of e-commerce work these days as well. And we're pleased to welcome Lee through our executive director in New York, John Costanzo's network, and are excited to do more with Lee and also grow our presence in Southwestern Ontario, together with another senior executive, Jim Peoples. And Jim is the president and chief operating officer with Challenger Motor Freight, based in Cambridge, Ontario. And Challenger has, I think, about 1,500 trucks, is one of the largest privately held fleets in Canada, able to move goods all over North America and beyond. And really excited to have Jim and his expertise and growing business within our community as well. Now, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about New York in a few minutes, and excited that on the heels of our recent launch of Maple New York chapter and our recent inaugural event that John led in mid-August, we have a couple of senior executives in the energy sector who have come on board as members as well. Robert Cattell is a distinguished executive in the energy space and currently is the chairman of the Advanced Energy Research and Technology Center and the National Offshore Wind Research and Development Consortium. And we'll have the pleasure of hearing more from Bob and our next new member invitation that we're going to talk about at our upcoming Maple New York event in mid-November. And the other gentleman I'm referring to is David Manning. David is the Director of Stakeholder and Community Relations for Brookhaven National Laboratory, based in Upton, New York. This is a Department of Energy lab doing incredible scientific work. And David has a long career in the energy sector, having served as a deputy minister in Alberta for the energy sector and a US advisor to former Premier of Alberta. So honored to have David within our community as well. And then, of course, our membership is comprised not only of individual participants, but also corporate memberships. And really excited to have a pioneering company, Toria, from Waterloo, Ontario, one of the well springs of innovation in Canada, as one of our newest corporate members. And Toria is really doing some exciting work in end-to-end encryption, business collaboration platform work, with video conferencing and file sharing and messaging, where we can hold meetings like this in a highly secure and private manner and not be worried about what's happening with our data after the fact. So Toria, I think, is a future Zoom slayer, let's say, and we're excited to have their pioneering work in this space within our community. And you might have read the recent article that their CEO wrote in the recent issue of Momentum. And also in the software space, delighted to have PowerShifter join us from Vancouver. PowerShifter is a very successful digital design agency working in apps and websites and helping simplify and improve user experiences online for companies like TELUS and the BC government and many other clients they've worked with, and also have been a strong supporter of our community in Vancouver, and so delighted to have them come on board as a corporate member. And you'll be seeing an article from them next week in the September issue of Momentum. And then thank you to all the folks that have renewed their membership this year, from the Business Development Bank of Canada, Cardinal Point Wealth Management, Riverside County's Office of Foreign Trade, RSM, accounting, tax, and audit firm, Unstoppable Conversations with a presence in both Alberta and here in Orange County, our cybersecurity friends at XA Hive, and executive member Fabio Furlan, who runs the Canadian Standards Association group here in Southern California. And also there have been a number of members who have actually stepped up their membership commitment to Maple during the pandemic. Kenobi Martins, IP law firm, with whom we were scheduled to come to Toronto and Waterloo in March. Those are going to be the next events on our calendar before everything shut down. Had the pleasure of working with them in July on a webinar talking about how do you procure and protect your IP as a Canadian business coming to the US. Kenobi Martins is now a Gold Leaf tier member of Maple. The Toronto Stock Exchange and the TSX Venture Exchange is also a renewing member at a Silver Leaf level. and excited to continue to work with Delilah Panio and Reed Hamilton in New York as they look at connecting with US companies that are looking at public venture capital opportunities, utilizing the advantages of the Toronto markets. And of course, our dear friends at Purelator as well, who have been a anchor member of Maple and who have increased their commitment this year to gold leaf level as well, and looking forward to doing more with Purelator on both coasts. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Stephen. So I'll just talk a little bit about the organization overall, sort of what's been going on. And, you know, to begin with, we're 5 years strong. Some of you have been with us since the beginning and some are new to the community, but we're thrilled that in June we were able to celebrate our 5th anniversary. Events have been a large part of what we do. As mentioned earlier, we've done over 75 events in Canada and Southern California. And as I also mentioned earlier, we've been doing events during the pandemic shutdown. We've done 7 since the shutdown began. And, you know, as we think about that, we think this is a great way for us to reach a broader geography and also to enable more content to be shared. So be on the lookout for us doing more of these even after the shutdown, and finding ways to really incorporate sort of the online platform. So, you know, as Stephen was talking, I noticed a lot of you introducing each other through the chat, and that's awesome. Appreciate that. And also introduced a link in the chat as well to join our LinkedIn group. We haven't really pushed on that heavily because we've always been getting together face to face, but you know, join our LinkedIn group, meet some fellow Canadians who have and Americans who have a common interest in this cross-border community, and see where that goes. We'll think about some other ways as well. So we've got about 100 executives in the membership currently. That's sort of across our corporate and executive members and so forth. And always want a shout out to our partners, the Consulate General of Canada, Los Angeles, City of Long Beach, World Trade Center, LA, and World Trade Center in Greater Vancouver. So thank you for that. It's been great. You know, one of the things that we have been really focused on lately is just growing our leadership team, growing our board of directors, bringing Anna Innes on from Air Canada onto the board and our advisory board as well. And then Marie-Josée Lachance, who's a producer, as our regional director in Quebec, Delilah Panio from TMX Group as an advisor, and Sam Panamalam as well as an advisor from XA Hive. So we're thrilled to be continuing to grow the organization. We also have Dave Foley from Brookfield Property and the California Market Center. They've got a fabulous redevelopment or reinvestment project in downtown Los Angeles, taking sort of the anchor of the fashion industry for LA and redeveloping that whole site, refurbishing the site. And that's a pretty exciting project we'll continue to talk about going forward. And then we have John Costanzo, as John mentioned, or sorry, Stephen mentioned, launching our Maple, New York branch. You know, we're 5 years into this, and you know, we think that we're doing the work that's appropriate for promoting trade cross-border, and we're really thrilled and honored to receive the Bob Kleist Leadership Award. It recognizes and honors an organization or company that has demonstrated inspirational and visionary leadership in the development of world trade in Southern California. So we're honored and humbled by this, and thrilled to be part of the international trading community. So, you know, this particular image and slide I bring up at our events, have brought it up for a while. We've always believed that this sort of cross-border, US-Canada cross-border executive community where we're promoting investment, entrepreneurship, and trade is something that doesn't just belong in Southern California. We've always felt that this is something that we can build a playbook here in Southern California and then move it forward. to other markets. And so we're thrilled to be doing that and demonstrating it with the launch of our New York chapter in June. And we were also thrilled to have the acting consul general, Kawar Nasim, join us for a great fireside chat or Zoom side chat with John as we launched that chapter. And that was a well-attended session. We're thrilled about that. And then moving to Vancouver, we've been growing Vancouver since 2016. It's the community that we've been to probably the most of any of the Canadian markets that we travel to. We've held a couple of delegations in Vancouver. We've done spring and fall receptions each year, member mixers. We've got that partnership with World Trade Center Vancouver, and Jason C., who has really been, carrying the maple flag in Vancouver for us, really felt along with him that it was time for us to announce that we're going to make Vancouver a formal chapter and so forth. And so we're thrilled to have Jason leading the charge there for us and continuing to look for other people who are interested in helping sort of take that maple brand forward in a market. And so thank you, Jason, for that. So with that, Stephen, do you want to pick it back up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. So, one of the things that we spent a lot of time doing is creating platforms to help you, our members, tell your stories, share your expertise, your insights, so that we can all learn from one another. And I think that is one of the strengths of our community, is that as we pivot through a time like the pandemic right now, where events are changing and have to be different out of necessity, that we can still rely on the strengths of our online delivery platforms to share articles and videos with the voices of you, our members, talking about what you do, your mission, your passions. And we've had a number of new content since our last meetings. Glenn is the managing director with the advisory services group of the Business Development Bank of Canada. Spoke at our March events, actually, and we sat down with Glenn to talk about the opportunities for coaching and mentoring high impact growth firms across Canada, and really interesting observations that Glenn shared. As did Victor Ko with RSM, who talked about the firm's focus on the mid-market and the unique challenges that mid-market firms face, and how their organization creates research and mechanisms for learning for their clients, and also people just in that space looking to understand how do they navigate through mid-market opportunities and challenges. In the summer, had the pleasure of sitting down with one of our advisory team members, Arlen Stoik, who's the managing principal of Avis & Young. Avis & Young is the fastest growing commercial real estate firm in North America, and is expanding even further into the UK and other markets. And it was really interesting talking with Arlen about the challenges on the commercial real estate space today, and the kind of conversations they're having with businesses about how do you balance the need for people to work remotely, but what are the benefits and the opportunities of having a physical space for people to come to. And so I encourage you to listen to those videos. And then, of course, one of our speakers today, Bill Klages with QA Consultants. We had a wonderful conversation during the summer as well that we captured in a couple episodes about the company's really smart way of leveraging the Toronto tech talent market as a nearshoring solution for US clients looking for software QA services, as well as some of the trends in software QA, such as getting software QA work done earlier in the development cycle, something called shift left. On the article front, of course, the pandemic is something that we wanted to touch upon, and it's always the case of how do we find our place within the broader narrative. And we've looked at it from a variety of perspectives. Actually, there's this wonderful firm down in San Diego who's a major reseller of one of our members, Technion, and it's ICE San Diego, Innovative Commercial Environments. And the CEO, Delinda Forsyth, shared something on LinkedIn that we liked so much that we asked her if we could put it in our newsletter. And it's about finding kind of light and grace during the crisis and recognizing some of the challenges that we all face as humans and as a team, and how does a leader help care for and nurture their business and their team members through the challenges of a pandemic. And then we also looked at the Canadian workforce in a pandemic from a legal perspective with our member Fasken Law, and understanding some of the regulations and needs to address during this time. We also looked at the impact on commercial real estate with Avison Young, and Arlen shared a wonderful article looking at Southern California marketplace. And then Matt Carvalho, who is the Chief Investment Officer with Cardinal Point Wealth Management, talked about some of the challenges in terms of investing during the COVID period, and what are some of the considerations that people need to keep in mind. We've also increased our interviews through the Momentum newsletter as well, and had the honor of interviewing Acting Consul General Kawar Nassim in New York to understand more about the Canadian New York economic ties, the depth and breadth of that relationship, and some of the priorities that the Canadian consulate presence has in New York going forward, and observations on our recently activated USMCA trade agreement. And in this interview, he talks about the fact that Canada has had a consular presence in New York for, I think, 101 years. And very much like Southern California, there are deep ties between Canada and the New York region. So that was a wonderful opportunity to hear from Kawar. So just briefly before we start our presentations with Chelsea and with Bill, a quick look down the road in terms of what's coming up. We are going to be having a Maple Vancouver online event in October. And we're finalizing the date right now with our featured speaker, who's someone very special, and we're looking forward to sharing that news with you. And that should be coming out in the next week or so. And then excited to be working with John again for our next New York online program, which will be on November 12th, with an energy sector focus, with Bob Cattell and David Manning as guest speakers. And we also are working on a San Diego online program with the Canadian Consulate and the Consulate General in LA, looking at Canada's economic ties with San Diego and the opportunities for the San Diego market to leverage the economic relationship with Canada as we go through the pandemic. And then we'll be doing our next online quarterly, so to speak, reception as we are today on December 10th, with speakers to be identified. There's been a plethora of online programs of late as we've been exiting the summer with a lot of our partners in Los Angeles. And there will be a panel discussion on export strategies next week that I'll be participating on. We'll be supporting LA World Trade Week again this year, which falls on September 22nd, an online program. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti is one of the speakers, as is the president of the Export-Import Bank. And then we're also excited to be attending an event that World Trade Center Los Angeles is doing in concert with Select USA, looking at sustainability opportunities in the LA market. Mayor Garcetti has a Green New Deal with very ambitious environmental goals for LA, which is the third largest metro economy in the world. And there's a lot of opportunity for Canadian companies to participate in projects and infrastructure and investments in sustainability, whether it's the ocean economy or it's looking at different transportation solutions, clean tech. And this will be touched upon on an overview event on September 24th, and there will be matchmaking events or opportunities for businesses that register following the presentations. So all this information you can find on our community events page on our website. All right, so now it's our pleasure to welcome Chelsea Peet, Consul and Senior Economic Officer from the province of Ontario, to the podium. And Chelsea, if you'd like to start uploading your slides, I'm going to share a little background on Chelsea. As mentioned, Consul and Senior Economic Officer, leading the Ontario Trade and Investment Office in San Francisco, co-located with the Canadian Consulate. The office supports Ontario companies seeking to connect with new partners and buyers, and supports US companies considering expansion opportunities in Canada. The office's region covers California, Arizona, Nevada, and Hawaii. Chelsea came to this role from Ontario's Ministry of Intergovernmental Affairs Cabinet Office, where as the Senior Manager for International Operations, she led a team in the strategic planning and delivery of premier-led international missions, as well as broader international engagement efforts in Ontario. She also previously served as the senior manager as well as the policy manager of the Program Policy and Design Unit at Ontario's Ministry of Training, Colleges, and Universities. Chelsea has extensive policy and operations experience and a broad background in international relations, including spending time with the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C., where she reported on trade issues and supported diplomatic outreach. She holds a Master of Arts degree from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, as well as an Honors Bachelor of Arts from McMaster University in Hamilton, with a focus on international relations and comparative politics and public policy. So it's our great pleasure to welcome Chelsea Peet to the podium. Chelsea, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. Well, hello everybody and good morning. It's so nice to be with you here today, and thank you again, Stephen, for the introduction. Thank you to all of the many Canadians, friends of Canada and California that are here with us today. Really excited to be with you. As Stephen mentioned, I'm Chelsea Peet. I'm the Consul and Senior Economic Officer representing the Government of Ontario here in California and leading our Trade and Investment Office. It's a real pleasure to be with you here today and with the Maple Business Council, which is made up of so many wonderful champions of Canada and the California-Canada relationship. I'm actually a proud Northern girl myself. I hail originally, from those of you who know Canada, I hail originally from Sioux Lookout, Ontario, which for those of you who might not have ridden a train across the country and might have missed it, it's about a 24-hour drive northwest of Toronto. I always like to tell people that from Toronto, you could drive to Florida or you could drive to my hometown. So really it's, you know, the choice is yours if you prefer some nice winter or some nice time in Florida. But all to say, it's a very long way from where we are here in California. So I'm privileged to be with you here today on behalf of the province and to be able to share a little bit about why Ontario is and will continue to be post-COVID a great place to live, work, and play. So just a little bit about us as a little bit of background. Our office is part of a network of 16 trade and investment offices around the world. We report to the Government of Ontario's Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. And we're responsible for supporting and promoting Ontario's business interests abroad. In all of our office locations, we're very fortunate to be co-located with the Canadian consulates and embassies, and we work to be on-the-ground resources for companies, institutions, and government partners. We promote the benefits of doing business with Ontario, encourage new investments and job creation, and connect companies to support business expansion deals. So from market intelligence to curated introductions, and this is all, I should add, entirely free and entirely confidential. We're here to build relationships so that businesses in California and Ontario have the tools they need to maximize global opportunities. Among the markets that Ontario is active in, I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that the United States is a top priority. The United States is Ontario's largest trading partner. Our province is the #1 export destination for 19 US states and the #2 export destination for another 9 states. Nearly 9 million American jobs depend on Canada-US trade and investment, and nearly 1 in 5 jobs in Ontario depend on trade. So we are incredibly important partners and markets to each other. For our team here in California in particular, I would say the relationship between Ontario and California is incredibly important. And the synergy and opportunities for collaboration could not be greater. California and Ontario are home to the first and second largest tech clusters in North America, which a lot of people don't know. And the value of our two-way trade is great. In fact, it made up the lion's share of Canada's trade with California last year at $26.6 billion. It's Ontario's second largest export market in the US after Michigan, and it's a large source of our imports as well. We at the Ontario Trade and Investment Office see this connectedness every day. There are a number of Ontario companies that are doing business in California and vice versa. So just as a couple of examples, you know, as it relates to Southern California in particular, there are more than 300 business establishments here in Southern California that are headquartered in Ontario, and those businesses employ more than 18,000 people. There's also more investment from Ontario into Southern California than any other Canadian province. In addition, homegrown Canadian tech companies are employing people here in California. So companies like BlackBerry and Shopify are here. We also have dual headquartered companies in California and Ontario. So companies like Fair, which is a tech company that supports the retail industry, that have big operations in both San Francisco and Waterloo. And we're regularly seeing more and more California-based companies open offices in Ontario as well. So Netflix, Silicon Valley Bank, Google, Nextdoor, just to name a few. I think these investments are a huge testament to the ecosystem in both Ontario and in California. And I think they're a great demonstration of the depth of the linkages between our two jurisdictions. And speaking of important partners, I'd be remiss if I also didn't just take a moment to acknowledge that the people participating in today's session and the Maple Council more broadly play such an important role in what we, with the Ontario office in California, are working to do every day here in the United States. You know, our network of Ontario offices is abroad because of people and relationships. So, you know, whether you and your families work in business or in government, you've been really critical to the work that we're doing to forge even closer ties between Ontario and California. And we want to continue to build on this relationship. So I just wanted to mention that, you know, we're truly fortunate to have a solid foundation already in place because of organizations and efforts like those that Maple and the group here are making every day. So I just wanted to take a minute to also just say thank you to Stephen and Rob and to all of you for all of your engagement and helping us encourage that. This is, of course, an incredibly important time for strong networks and robust relationships. Actually, this time last year, I was attending the Maple Fall reception in Los Angeles in person, and how very different things are 1 year on. You know, COVID has challenged the global community in ways unprecedented in modern times. And for those of us here in California and also in Northern Ontario, the recent wildfires have only made this year more difficult. You know, wherever you are, families, workers, businesses, and communities around the world are continuing to face immense personal and financial hardship. So this is definitely a time for the global community to come together. And that has always been the Ontario way. Our province is built on international trade, so welcoming and working collaboratively with people around the world is part of our DNA. As global economies are reopening and rebuilding, Ontario is ideally positioned to continue to be a safe haven for growth, stability, and prudent governance in North America. And we've actually seen some positive developments over the last months and see even brighter days on the horizon, and we're delighted that California's business community continues to share this future with us. So as we think about the path ahead, it's maybe useful to remember a little bit about how Ontario's economy was performing at the start of the year before COVID started. So for those of you who may be just a little bit less familiar about Ontario, Ontario is in the heart of North America. It is the economic engine of Canada. We are home to the 7th largest economy in North America by GDP and 39% of Canada's population and GDP. Geographically, Ontario is larger than France and Spain combined. It's actually more than double the size of California, and there are big things happening there. So from, you know, IT and financial services to automotive, environmental technologies, and life sciences, Ontario is innovating across multiple industries. It's where financial services are broadening into fintech and revolutionizing the way we invest. It's where artificial intelligence is leading to safer, cleaner, connected transportation, and where research is leading to a world where we can cure and prevent deadly diseases. So prior to COVID, Ontario was actually leading Canada in job creation. And this is the result of fundamental progress that Ontario has made to diversify its economy and make it faster, easier, and more cost-effective for companies to do business in the province. In the last several years, the government has made changes, including launching a red tape reduction initiative that has resulted in over 200 actions to cut red tape and reduce regulatory burden that are saving companies $5 billion in the cost of doing business in the province. And they've worked very hard to foster an ecosystem that allow provinces and businesses to thrive. Businesses and people to thrive. So while this has certainly been a tough year all around, and we believe this solid foundation will help Ontario's economy weather the storm and emerge even stronger on the other side. So when the COVID crisis hit, Ontario, like California, moved quickly to do whatever was required to protect public health and save lives. Sorry. As someone who watched developments in both jurisdictions very closely, it seemed the pandemic arrived in Ontario, I would say, maybe about a week after here in California, but the lockdown was similarly swift and fairly all-encompassing. From the outset, Ontario took a very, very cautious approach based on the advice of public health experts. Certainly, this involved some tough decisions to shut down Ontario's economy, much like here in California. Most people were working from home and only essential businesses were operating in person. Ontario moved very quickly to help businesses navigate the pandemic, which included making available $10 billion in support through tax and other deferrals to improve cash flow and protect jobs. Just as an example, in March, the province put out a call to the business community to help address the COVID-19 outbreak through an Ontario Together web portal, which included a $50 million fund called the Ontario Together Fund. This $50 million fund was set up as a one-time emergency support to help companies make investments to build their capacity or provide technological solutions, either in new equipment needed in hospitals, long-term care homes, and other critical public services. And the business community really stepped up to the plate. So since its launch, the Ontario Together web portal has received more than 28,000 submissions. More than 19,000 emergency supply leads have been converted into $775 million in purchases of critical supplies and equipment to support staff on the front lines in Ontario. And over 7,000 ideas have been submitted on how to address the outbreak, including offers from business to retool and make critical supplies to help or deliver needed goods and services. It's pretty incredible, I think, not just Ontario, but all over the place, how communities have come together to support each other in this very challenging year. And in Ontario, we're deeply grateful to the business community for its response to the COVID pandemic. In addition to the private sector, I should say it's also worth mentioning too that Canada's governments at all levels, federal, provincial, territorial, have collaborated extensively to safely restart the economy. As just a couple of tangible examples of this, Ontario and the federal government partnered with 3M Canada in late August to expand its facility in Brockville to produce N95 respirators. So while COVID has certainly posed some significant challenges and hardships, we've been pleased to see collaboration across the board. And we're definitely seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Ontario launched stage 3 of its 3-stage reopening process in July, and most businesses have now reopened with public health and workplace safety measures in place. Employment numbers in July and August were also up, including manufacturing jobs, so we're continuing to see signs that the economy is starting to stabilize. But by no means is Ontario ready to declare victory over the pandemic, and so the province continues to take actions to support economic recovery and growth. For example, this summer, Ontario introduced the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. It's a first step in a Made in Ontario plan for growth, renewal, and economic recovery. A centerpiece of this plan is a new investment attraction agency called Invest Ontario. Invest Ontario will promote the province as a key investment destination, making Ontario more competitive while sending a strong signal to investors that the province continues to be open for business. That means open for jobs, open to trade, and open to investment. It will be a one-stop shop for businesses and investors, moving at the speed of business to support strategic domestic firms and attract business from around the world. It will initially focus on 3 important sectors for COVID-19 recovery, including advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and technology. The new Invest Ontario agency, alongside our continued recovery from the pandemic, will continue to position the province as a safe haven for growth, stability, and prudent governance in North America. And really, these actions are only strengthening the many great reasons Ontario is a great place to live, work, and play. And so to cap off our time here today, I just wanted to share a little bit more about some of the reasons that Ontario continues to be a solid choice for companies looking to either grow and expand their business, and how California and Ontario will continue to be key partners now and into the future. To start, I think we really need to talk about the talent. So, Ontario is home to some of the best and brightest minds in the world. At 68%, more people in Ontario have completed post-secondary education than anywhere else in the OECD. We continue to grow this talent at home through our 44 public colleges and universities, and we produce more than 42,000 STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, and math, graduates every single year. Ontario is also home to a leading edge innovation ecosystem with some of the top tech ecosystems in the world. So just as an example, in 2018, Toronto hired more tech workers than the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. combined. Ottawa was ranked as the top momentum market in North America, while also laying claim to having the highest concentration of tech workers. And Waterloo, of course, continues to be a rising tech superstar. Engineering talent coming out of the University of Waterloo is among the most highly recruited in Silicon Valley. But it's not just tech. Ontario is Canada's largest cluster for life sciences. Our automotive sector ranks second in North America, and our aerospace sector is part of the global supply chain for virtually every passenger aircraft in the world. And as the new economy continues to emerge in full force, so too do Ontario's cutting-edge sectors like artificial intelligence, where we are now home to more than 300 AI firms and the headquarters of the Vector Institute, which is run by the renowned Geoffrey Hinton. Vector is a Made in Ontario organization dedicated to working with industry, startups, academia, and accelerators to advance research and commercialization of AI. Ontario is, of course, also a very cost-competitive jurisdiction. We have great incentive programs to support research and development cost savings in the province, some of the lowest corporate tax rates in America. And our publicly funded healthcare system means that employer healthcare costs are typically 30% lower than the US average. Other reasons the province will continue to be a great location for business. Ontario is only a short distance from major US hubs and has access to global markets through Canada's free trade agreements with some 50 countries. This includes the Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, that supports free trade with Europe. And of course, on July 1st, the new Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA as we call it in Canada, or the USMCA as we call it here in the US, entered into force, strengthening our trade relationship with the US, as well as Mexico. And last, but certainly not least, we pride ourselves in the belief that we as a country become stronger when we incorporate diversity into our way of life. So vibrant pieces of ethnicity, language, and gender paint a picture of Canada's values, a place where everyone is welcome. Our province is a place where more than 200 languages are spoken on a daily basis. And in our provincial capital city of Toronto, more than 50% of residents are foreign born. In fact, tech companies in and around the Greater Toronto Area have seen a surge in international job applications of late, and when companies were asked why the number was so high, 61% of them said it's because of friendly immigration programs in Canada, like Canada's Global Skills Strategy, which is a fast-track program launched in 2017 that expedites work visas for highly skilled workers from around the world in as little as 10 business days. Open work permits for spouses and study permits for dependents are also processed in as little as 2 weeks, and this way families can stay together. At a time when the world is becoming increasingly complex, pandemic global health crises, the increasing prevalence of natural disasters like wildfires, earthquakes, hurricanes, just to name a few, I'm proud that we're committed to building a welcoming and inclusive place for people to do business and to live. We look forward to our partners in California continuing to be a part of this. The synergy and opportunities for collaboration could not be greater. So thank you again to Stephen and to the Maple organization for hosting today's session, and to everybody for tuning in. Hopefully this overview has been a little bit helpful, either as an overview or a refresher on Ontario and the path ahead post-COVID. And if you have any questions, please do reach out. If you'd like to chat further, please do connect with us. We're here and looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Chelsea. Fabulous content. I'm always struck by the similarities between Ontario and California in the aspects of sheer size of economies, the quality of innovation, the diversity of the talent. There's so many strengths that we share between Ontario and California that I think make us wonderful partners for one another. Question for you. When you're speaking with companies about opening offices in Ontario, what what tend to be the main reasons that they're looking for, and what's the first step for an engagement?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think, nowadays, I think talent is always the number one consideration for any company that's looking to grow their presence in another market. And so that's always high among them. But interestingly, I think maybe 5-10 years ago, the second reason would have been kind of what's the cost and how cost competitive are you? But more recently, I think the number two, if not number one reason has been with respect to immigration and, the ability to bring in the needed talent that a company needs to support their growth. And so, I think there are a lot of organizations here in the US that have had challenges with, staff that are on H-1B visas and what their futures might hold. And I think, as I mentioned, Canada's global skills strategy has been a really big, asset to the Canadian innovation ecosystem to bring in that talent to Canada if they're not able to stay here in the US. So I think those are probably the few things that companies tend to ask about. And then in terms of what is the first step, I would say talking to us is a great first step because, as I mentioned, we can sort of help navigate that ecosystem, connect the companies and organizations with relevant partners in Ontario. If they are looking to do cost comparisons of, different cities that they're exploring, we can help with that. Under other circumstances, pre-COVID, we could help with investor visits, help set up, a few days in different cities that they might be interested in so that they can see firsthand all of the great things that are happening across the province. And really help them make the connections that they need to kind of move forward, including, if they wanted to actually set up a business in the province and incorporate, or if they have immigration questions, helping them navigate those waters. So lots of different ways we can help. So I would say, connecting with us is a great way to start.
Great. What surprises people about Ontario have you found?
The size in particular, just I think is pretty surprising. As I mentioned, my hometown is 24 hours northwest of Toronto, but that's really not, it's kind of, maybe 2/3 up into the province. There's still, more to go after that. And granted, it's a lot of trees and lakes and beautiful country, but it's a very, very large province. But I think, from a business standpoint, one of the things that might surprise people is just all of the different kind of industries that are active in Ontario and the innovation that's taking place there. I think, with Canada generally, but also including Ontario, a lot of people don't know or are just learning what a leader on, Canada and Ontario are within the artificial intelligence ecosystem. As I mentioned, we have more than 300 AI companies in Ontario now. And the Vector Institute is doing some really great work in Toronto. But there's other, AI organizations in the province as well. Waterloo has the Waterloo AI Institute, which is doing some great work with companies. And so I think sometimes that can be quite surprising to companies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, if there are any questions from the audience, we will have an opportunity to speak with Chelsea further in the breakout room. So I'll turn it over to Rob now to introduce Bill. And Bill, if you want to get your slides set up, that'd be terrific.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it. Good. So let's introduce Bill. So Bill Klages is President of Influencer Relation Partner Management at QA Consultants. Bill leads QA Consultants' third-party advisor and industry analyst relations. Based in Los Angeles, California, Bill also supports U.S. sales and drives business development for the U.S. West Coast region. Bill comes to QA Consultants as a seasoned B2B marketing leader and analyst relations expert with over 25 years of experience in market business development, consulting, and executing delivery of global services in technology and business process solutions. He's an experienced and trusted advisor who provides expertise and comprehensive knowledge of the global sourcing market and has consulted on strategic global service delivery models. Previously, Bill consulted Global 2000 companies on executing large IT outsourcing and business process outsourcing global delivery solutions. Prior to his role at QA Consultants, Bill led the global advisor relations functions for a mid-tier global technology service provider. Also spent 7 years as a senior advisor for a global boutique advisory firm, Information Services Group, where he consulted with companies including Caterpillar, Google, Yahoo, Walgreens, Warner Brothers, Kraft Foods, and more. When at Arthur Andersen, Bill was a senior manager responsible for a portfolio of business process outsourcing clients in the Chicago area. And before switching to marketing, Bill began his career as a Big Four auditor and certified public accountant and worked in corporate finance and treasury leadership roles. With an interest in marketing, Bill earned his MBA from Northwestern University, focusing on marketing and international finance. And then never one to shy from numbers, Bill is an inactive member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And on a personal note, Bill enjoys golfing, snow skiing, playing guitar, and took up surfing late in life. As Bill says it, there's something very special about being in the water early in the morning and having the dolphins playing next to you. So with that, Bill, take it from there.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much. Once again, welcome to all the Maple members and our cross-border community. Chelsea, that was a wonderful segment, and it's great to join you to speak here today as well. Sorry, I'm just having just going to reload the screen real quick. All right, sorry about that. Although I'm not Canadian, and besides working for a software company or a software services company in Canada, I do have a lifelong warm spot for Canada in my heart, as I visited Banff for my honeymoon in 1988. And these are actual photos from that trip. It was at age 26 that this was the first trip outside of America for me. And to this day, I have yet to see a more beautiful sight than Lake Moraine, here shown here in the picture in the Valley of the 10 Peaks. And for you vintage Canadians, you'll recall that Lake Moraine was printed on the back of Canada's $20 bill. Pretty amazing sight. So here's a quick overview of what I plan to cover. I'm going to share with you the immigration success story of QA Consultants founder and CEO, and why Canada's open immigration policies are fueling the technology brain gain. We'll take a look at fundamentals and other key drivers of the Greater Toronto Region's rising dominance in technology. And then I'll round off with a quick overview of why Canada is well positioned as a nearshoring destination for technology services for US and especially California companies. Very quickly on QA Consultants. So we celebrated our 25th year in 2019. We were founded in Toronto by QA pioneer Alex Rodoff. We're the largest and oldest pure play software testing firm in North America, with all of our services delivered onshore. We have about 200 full-time employees, but our delivery model succeeds because of the long-established network of freelance QA professionals across Canada and the US. We patented our on-demand testing and our test factory, and we have enormous depth in software QA intellectual assets built from over 5,500 engagements. And we were recently awarded for our mobile testing services. Let's get started. I'm going to first address what might be the single most important factor fueling Greater Toronto's technology brain gain. I thought you might appreciate a more intimate and humbling Canadian immigration success story. So I want to share with you the story of Alex Rodoff, our very own founder and CEO of QA Consultants. Alex's family story is the perfect embodiment of how Canada welcomes world talent and diversity. In the early 1980s, Alex's father sought to take his family away from the Soviet Union. His father was a top metal materials scientist, and in the world, he had accumulated many patents for his work. The Rodoff family were devoutly Jewish. They applied to leave the Soviet Union, but were denied. So now, besides being under assault for their religious beliefs, they were now labeled refuseniks, which is a term that was virtually synonymous with communist treason. It wasn't until the late 1980s, under a friendlier Gorbachev regime, that they were finally allowed to leave. And with only about $80 each and the clothes they could carry, the family made their way to Austria, then Italy, and finally to the welcoming arms of Toronto. Influenced by his father's deep work ethic, Alex began building his career in technology. Alex's passion, his expertise, and vision for software testing as a service led him to pioneer the formalization of software testing and quality assurance as a profession and as a service industry. He created his own firm, our firm, in the mid-1990s. According to Alex, there were key tailwinds and factors for progressing software QA. Formal QA budgets were lacking, and software testing as a function of the software development lifecycle was in its infancy. QA was generally performed by the developers. Schools didn't teach QA. Tech grads wanted to code and not test. There were garage schools popping up to help teach immigrants and non-technical people how to test software. Alex saw the need to provide a bench of resources to the major system integrators of the time. In the mid-1990s, he saw the dot-com and digital era explode with new software platforms. In the late 1990s, saw drastic demand for testing resources to meet the Y2K problem. As a result, QA Consultants became the first pure-play testing firm in North America, truly highlighting a Canadian immigration success story. Today, Canada has one of the most progressive open immigration policies in the world and is touted as a model for bolstering economic success. Unlike the US, Canada has adopted a demand-driven and high-skilled talent policy to attract the world's top technology talent. And this is reinforced by a remarkable fast track to citizenship. I'd like to give a special shout out to Maple member Andrew Cumming, managing partner of Cumming and Partners, for lending me some of the content on the topic of immigration policy. Andrew presented an in-depth comparison of Canadian immigration and US policy at last year's Maple event in Southern California. I encourage you to review his full white paper on the topic, available on Maple's website. Let me point out one very distinguishing aspect of Canadian policy. Unlike the US, where immigration is completely controlled at the federal level, Canada's provincial immigration approach gives Ontario and other provinces the ability to approve immigrants at the provincial level. This slide provides a few fascinating metrics that support Toronto's accelerating brain gain. It's remarkable that just since 2019, Toronto area has added 67,000 new technology resources, bringing the total technology labor pool to over 250,000 this year. For these stats, I'm citing the 2020 CBRE Scoring Tech Talent Report. Toronto boasts the #2 brain game for technology talent in North America, only behind the San Francisco Bay Area or Silicon Valley. The technology sector as a percent of total jobs in the greater Toronto area, and adding in Ottawa, now rivals that of the Silicon Valley. This brain gain, it's not only the result of progressive immigration programs, but also the world-class tech and engineering education institutions in the greater Toronto area. Computer science and software engineering degrees cost substantially less than their counterpart US institutions. My company is thriving, and our success is directly attributed to the abundance of engineering talent in Toronto. And I might note that QA consultants' experience rate for attrition or employee turnover is extremely low, which is, to my understanding, common for most Canadian companies. So let's move into the next section and talk about how Greater Toronto Area rivals America's Silicon Valley for tech talent and innovation. It's perhaps the most happening tech hub in North America, garnering the name Silicon Valley North. According to the recent CBRE Tech Scoring Report, Toronto is rated as the 4th largest technology hub in North America, sharing company with Silicon Valley, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. It's interesting to note for this audience that Orange County, California, and Ottawa, Ontario made the biggest leaps in those rankings. Toronto has historically been a deep tech leader in areas such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, robotics, and automation, and it's considered the early incubator for artificial intelligence. And I think we can all agree that these are some of the key fundamentals that support the growth and the sustenance of a strong tech ecosystem, beginning with the labor pool. And I've already reviewed the tremendous brain gain happening in Toronto. Over 250,000 technology jobs, and remarkably 67,000 added within just the last year. Toronto has a world-class technology education system. And as I mentioned, there are generally very low attrition rates. And this helps with substantial productivity and efficiency. Canada, and specifically Ontario, provide a unique friendliness to innovation with various research funding and tax incentive programs. The Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program, or SHRED as we call it, uses tax incentives to encourage Canadian businesses of all size and all sectors to conduct research and development. And my company, QA Consultants, is currently working with SHRED to help fund our R&D in robotics and autonomous vehicle test automation. There's a strategic innovation fund with over $1 billion available to assist new ventures. There are countless private and public sector partnerships like the Creative Destruction Lab, a nonprofit organization that helps technology startups get funding and scale up. There are well over 100 innovation hubs and accelerators. Our partner and fellow Maple member, Exahive, is a great example of a North American cybersecurity firm that was spawned from one of Ontario's technology incubators. Exahive was part of the Venus Cybersecurity Incubator, which was originally funded and directly supported by the Canadian Security Establishment, the provincial government, and other private and public entities. Other examples include the Velocity Garage, the world's largest free startup incubator, and Catalyst 137, the world's largest IoT, or Internet of Things, manufacturing space. So as we have our breakout session later, it would be great to hear from anyone on the call of their experience relative to incubators and accelerators in Ontario. There is substantial public and private funding for technology R&D and startups. There are over 90 private funding organizations in Greater Toronto. Toronto has seen 50% growth in technology in the past 5 years. There are over 5,000 startups in the Greater Toronto area. Over 1,700 of these startups are in Waterloo alone. Waterloo is a top 15 global startup ecosystem. And it was also ranked the #1 emerging secondary region in North America. Diversity is important and differentiates the Toronto tech ecosystems. 16% of startups in Toronto are founded by women, which leads the world. Our very own Maple membership includes great examples of women-founded or co-founded firms. And many of you know Exahive CEO, Sam, who also serves on Maple's board. And I believe Sam is here with us today. Hi, Sam. Well, Sam's story is an excellent example of how a woman-led company from Ontario has succeeded, with offices in Canada, Southern California, New York, and the United Kingdom. Here are some of the top names of recognizable tech companies, both American and Canadian, with significant presence in the Greater Toronto Tech Corridor. And again, I'd love to hear more examples and other success stories coming out of Toronto in our breakout session to follow. Moving into my final topic, when we think about outsourcing technology, things like software development and testing, application maintenance and support services, and even technology infrastructure, we generally tend to think about faraway places like India, Eastern Europe, or the Philippines, or what we refer to as offshoring. And the term "nobody ever got fired for buying at IBM" has seemingly been replaced by "nobody ever gets fired for offshoring to India." However, in the past few years, and especially in the past 6 months, with the global pandemic crisis, offshoring is being reevaluated as the business risk is appreciating, service delivery is inconsistent, and according to some of our clients, the promised cost savings are not being realized. As such, many technology service buyers are considering repatriating some or all of their critical services, either back in-house or to North American-based outsourcing providers, the latter being what we call onshoring or nearshoring. As we covered earlier in the segment, Canada has become a powerhouse in technology and is quite a compelling option for US companies for both technology services delivery captives as well as third-party nearshoring services. According to Robert Scott, a partner with PwC Canada, and I quote, "We, Canada, do not have the same volume of people as India, but Canada is generally competing at the leading edge of technology where close interaction between business users and developers is critical." And I'm just going to repeat that, where close interaction between business users and developers is critical. So let's find out what makes Canada a great nearshoring alternative for technology and software services outsourcing. Nearshoring is an important and strategic global service delivery option from both a risk and delivery perspective. So what are some of the strategic reasons to move your technology work to a nearshore model? First, the tailwinds to nearshore have never been greater, led by what looks like a long-term impact of this COVID pandemic crisis, which has forced global service providers to move to a work-from-home model. In the more popular third world outsourcing regions, the work-from-home model is not as easy to administer as it is in highly connected and stable countries like the US and Canada. And we predict more geodiversification in global service delivery models, or in other words, shifting some work away from higher risk regions. Cheap labor is no longer the top goal for operations leaders and is quickly being extinguished by the demand for more innovation and automation. Canada is a leader in technology innovation, and as we previously discussed, Canada is the birthplace of the Java programming language and leads the world in advances in artificial intelligence. US companies with development and QA teams in high-cost regions like California and New York can still achieve 50% cost savings for software engineers by moving work to Canada. Other strategic benefits, like proximity of remote teams, allow teams to collaborate together in the daylight hours and similar time zones. Working in similar time zones makes the software development cycle more predictable. You can't put a price on this benefit, but trust me, I've worked with offshore delivery models and I've led offshore teams, and there truly is a loss of efficiency. In the past few years, we've seen a growing signs of offshore fatigue. And it's been QAC's observation with many of our new clients, especially in the last 18 months, that are repatriating or bringing back software quality assurance functions and perhaps seeking to diversify their supplier geo-footprint. You can see the graph on the left illustrates the most recent decline in the political risk index for India. What's interesting is that this report was published prior to the COVID crisis. We suspect that if this political risk was reassessed today, it would be substantially worse. Here are some of the top issues that we consistently hear from our clients who have outsourced offshore. There are lag times, days lost, lack of access, executive time and cost traveling to India, those dreaded 10 p.m. conference calls, as New York City is 9.5 hours and California 12.5 hours behind Bengaluru, India. Culture and language gaps do dilute team productivity. Offshore annual attrition rates are 20 to 25% versus 10% or less in Canada. Offshore labor models depend on freshers or new college grads with inexperience and high turnover. And finally, not achieving the business case cost savings that were promised. Here are some of the key factors and advantages for nearshoring IT services to Canada. There's currently about a 30% exchange rate benefit for US buyers. And as I pointed out earlier, Canada's technology workforce has a very low turnover. And for software engineers, costs can be 50% lower than the expensive cities in the US. Travel is basically a domestic flight from anywhere in the US. Flight times from LAX to Toronto average 4.5 hours, less than an hour between New York and Toronto. The major US and Canadian cities are all within a 3-hour time zone band. We speak the same language, and in general, there's very little cultural gap. And both the US and Canada enjoy consistent technology infrastructure in terms of connectivity, cloud, and security. This next slide highlights the average cost differential and quality of talent for software engineers for most of the major North American markets. And I apologize that it may be slightly difficult to read. All these costs are measured in US dollars. And let me just point out that this is just base salary and does not include employee benefits costs, which are estimated to be 66% higher in the US versus Canada. Here, I'm highlighting specifically the labor cost differential for software engineers in Toronto versus Southern California markets like Los Angeles and Orange County, which easily exceeds 40%. And again, keep in mind, this is base salary cost only, not including benefits. And as Chelsea highlighted earlier, the average benefit load in Canada is about 1/3 of that of the US. Although the chart positions Toronto and Vancouver as very high on the quality axis, the study rated quality of talent using just 30 schools in North America. 25 of those are in the US. And in my opinion, this by default penalizes the diversity of foreign talent in places like Toronto and those who are graduating from top schools elsewhere in the world. Nevertheless, it's clear that in terms of both cost and quality of talent, Toronto provides a high-value alternative for provisioning or locating technology services. Before I wrap up, I'd like to make a few comments on the impact of the global pandemic on global technology services. COVID has impacted global delivery and perhaps is helping magnify the benefits of a nearshore IT delivery option. In the past 6 months, the COVID pandemic has exposed enormous delivery risk in third world locations. Political and infrastructure risk in third world outsourcing locations has increased exponentially. Government intervention with various lockdown policies is escalating and may be inconsistent from region to region, even within the same country. Sounds familiar, right? Remote working outside of the established tech centers is subject to a country's quality and consistency of infrastructure, including things like electricity, as well as access to connectivity. Security issues are increasing, and outsourcing clients are cautious about giving access to their systems and data outside of the firewalls of tech city infrastructure, making work from home much more challenging in places like India. In the future, we're likely to see more companies move to work from home models, but with increased online collaboration. And let me just make this point. This online collaboration from a multitude of endpoints will require secure and predictable infrastructure from home to home instead of office to office. And finally, I'll leave you with a few parting thoughts. Go north to Canada, and especially Toronto. Toronto makes a compelling case for moving software and technology services to reduce your risk and gain innovation. And I'm going to make a shameless public service announcement on behalf of QA consultants. We believe firmly in designing your software quality assurance processes to occur earlier in the development lifecycle. We refer to this as shifting left. This includes performance and security testing, which is commonly left to the end of the cycle. Investing in promoting a shift left testing approach will ultimately help identify and fix defects earlier and save you costs and improve your customers' experience. Most importantly, with today's cybersecurity threats, shifting left with security testing will help you avoid embarrassing software breaches and keep you out of the press. So that wraps up my segment. Again, I want to express my gratitude to the Maple Business Council for this opportunity to speak with you today. And I look forward to the breakout sessions and any follow-up questions or thoughts you may have discussed. I've provided my contact information here for your convenience. So I'll send it back over to you, Rob and Stephen.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Much appreciated. So, Stephen, I'll go ahead and get started on getting the breakout room set up. Did you have any questions that you wanted to cover as well?
Yes. First of all, Bill, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I love how you looked at the context of your business beyond, the specific services that you provide, but in terms of the history of the founding of the company and the story you told about Alex Rodoff, and then putting your business in the context of the Toronto marketplace and greater Canada story. So I think that was a very refreshing way of looking at a business very holistically. You mentioned the term delivery captive. I was wondering if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sure. So when I mentioned delivery captive, essentially that means that a company, so let's use an example of Google or Amazon based in California. They build and operate their own delivery or development center in a nearshore location like Toronto. So as we know, both of those organizations have quite a presence in the Toronto area. This is, a different solution than, if you were to outsource those services to a third party. Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, we talked a lot about Toronto. Are there other Canadian cities that you would like to highlight as well in terms of tech strength?
Yeah, sure, Stephen. So the same 2020 CBRE Tech Talent Scoring Report that I referenced for some of the other data actually shows there are 4 Canadian cities ranked in the top 20 and actually the top 16 of North American cities. So besides Toronto, you also have Vancouver, Ottawa, and Montreal. They're all, again, ranked in the top 16. And as I pointed out, and this is pretty amazing, Ottawa moved up the most in those rankings of all North American cities.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example, Bill, of you can relate about a company that made that shift left and some of the benefits that came from that experience that may have done the work, the testing later in the development cycle prior to maybe working with your firm and adopting this, this model of testing earlier and how they benefited from that?
Yeah, I can give a general sort of what we see with particularly our software product clients. Software product companies today, they have to push their product out very quickly to be competitive. And so typically what we see with those sorts of clients for us is that they tend to let a lot of defects and other, another word we use is technology debt. They let it go. They don't have as much of the filters in terms of software testing built into the cycle. Some of them actually do it deliberately. And again, this is in order to get speed to market. And they also, we actually help with a more sort of a risk, a risk-based approach to testing and finding defects, which allows those companies to maintain their production cycle, but find those defects that would result in the highest risk. For example, vulnerabilities that could be security issues that might result in a breach. And obviously, software product companies will have a very hard time living down a breach of their software, especially the younger, up and coming software product companies.
Great. Thank you, Bill.